My name is Bernice King. I am the CEO of the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the youngest child of Coretta Scott King and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As we all know, today is Father's Day. And this day has always been very difficult for me and my siblings because for the past 54 years, we've not been able to celebrate it with our father. We missed the childhood years, teenage years, young adult years. And now as I continue to age, it's very conceivable with the longevity in my family, barring any other illnesses, that my father would have been here today. But his life was taken 54 years ago at the hands of a gunman, an assassin, when I was only 5 years of age. What many may not know is that my grandmother, my father's mom, her life was taken at the hands of a gunman at our church while she was playing the Lord's Prayer. A gunman started shooting during the worship service, and she was killed. I was 11 years of age. The tragedy and the trauma that we faced as a family was very difficult. It lives with us every day. Loss in and of itself is extremely difficult. But when you lose someone to gun violence, it is extremely painful. It leaves you with an unexplained amount of lifetime trauma. And it's especially painful considering the type of death, the sudden and the tragic death. And so on this Father's Day, I join with countless others in our nation who are also in deep pain over the loss of a loved one to gun violence, a father, mother, child, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, grandparents, loved ones, period. And I'm also remembering today the loss of life of dear friends, one even recently, who took their own lives with a gun in an attempt to resolve their inner conflict. Guns are rampant in our nation. Guns have been the go-to, in fact, for conflict in our nation. But we haven't always used guns when we had conflicts. Our ancestors didn't have widespread ownership and access to guns and solved them in other ways. Conflict can be solved without violence and using guns. In fact, as the daughter of one of the greatest warriors of peace and nonviolence, I know all too well that there are different ways to resolve conflict and violence. I know the value, the worth, and power of nonviolence. I serve as the CEO of the King Center in Atlanta, which is the official living memorial to the life, work, and legacy of my father. And our mission is to empower people to create a just, humane, equitable, and peaceful world by applying my father's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence, which we call Nonviolence 365. We train and educate people to embrace it as a way of life so they can address violence, conflict, and issues of social justice from a nonviolent framework. Nonviolence is an effective and proven method to resolve violence, conflict, and injustice. It changes people's perspectives. And many who have taken our training say that it's calming. And with the rise in tension, the stress, the anxiety, and mental health in this country today, which often leads people to resort to use a gun to deal with their inner and outer conflict, we need means to calm people down. And yes, we need responsible legislation. As I think about what's happening right now, I want to ask us to think and consider that gun violence in our nation has reached an extreme, and I mean extreme, level. And while I respect the Second Amendment and the right of those who wish to bear arms, when I think about those who framed our Constitution and what they envisioned, I don't believe that they envisioned children fearing going to school because of the threat of mass killing. I don't believe they envisioned churchgoers would be gunned down while worshiping or praying. I don't believe that they envisioned just a routine visit to the grocery store would end in someone losing their life in a mass killing. I don't believe they envision our sons and daughters being gunned down senselessly in our streets. I don't believe they envisioned people being killed because of the color of their skin, because of their ethnicity, their religion, their gender, their sexual orientation, their class. In fact, it was all about defense. But today, the level of gun violence is at the hand of aggression. It's at the hand of retaliation. It's at the hand of hate. And something has to be done to stop it. We can do better. And we can be better. This is affecting all of us. No matter what we believe, what we practice as it relates to the Second Amendment right to bear arms, all of us are being impacted. Many of us are now on edge. We're stressed. We're anxious. We're worried. We are afraid, and we're deeply concerned. Our nation is facing a major crisis around gun violence, with the unprecedented mass killings, suicides, interpersonal killings. Every day, we're experiencing a tremendous loss. And now, more than ever, regardless of our party affiliation, we must work together to resolve this problem. And so I'm here to make a plea. As I participate in the People's Filibuster for gun safety 24/7, I'm making this plea to the citizens of the United States, to those who are bearers of guns because of the Second Amendment right, to our legislatures at the local, state, and national levels, that we work together on ways to minimize the level of gun violence significantly in this nation by passing legislation that addresses our responsibility to each other and for each other. Yes, we have rights, but we also have responsibilities. We need legislation that would strongly consider measures, for me personally, related to assault weapons. It wasn't an assault weapon, but my father was shot with a rifle. And I want you to think about this. These assault weapons are weapons of destruction, not weapons of protection. Are they really necessary for any and everybody to have access to in this nation? Just something to think about. We need measures that also invest in nonviolent conflict resolution training, not just for our schools, because we always want to say just the schools, but also in our corporate settings, in our organizations, in our faith communities, among our law enforcement officers. We need to make the investment. It's time to shift our priorities in this nation. In fact, that's what my father asked us to do in 1967, to rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-centered society. We also need measures that invest time, education, and resources into mental health. And it needs to be expansive, because we are a traumatized nation from so many aspects. No one is really exempt. We need more mental health agencies, more practitioners, and we need to make sure it's accessible in all communities. No one, and I mean no one, should be exempt. At the end of the day, whatever we end up passing by way of legislation, we still are going to have to focus on creating a more nonviolent nation. This is the beginning. Legislation being passed is not the end. We have a lot of work to do. But in the meantime, we need to calm things down, and we need responsible legislation accompanied by these things that I have made a plea for. And so I want to close with this. I urge our Congress, our elected officials, because we focus a lot on Congress, but we need to also remind those at the state level to really look at the many lives that we are losing on a yearly, monthly, and daily basis to gun violence, and pass the responsible legislation that will keep this country safe. Gun violence, as we know, transcends nationality, race, gender, color, religion. As I said earlier, it affects everybody. It's something we have all been affected by, but yet we've become desensitized to its effects and the harm that it causes. Too many have turned a blind eye to the problem until another mass shooting happens, and we hear horror stories of an elementary school child having to rub another person's blood on her body and pretend as if she's dead in order for her to see another day. What have we become in this nation when we can allow this to continue and to affect and impact the minds of our children. So I come today to ask that we spare another family from the pain that my family and millions of other families around the world have felt from losing a loved one from gun violence. We can do this. We must do this. And as I said earlier, this is really about restoring, I don't even say restoring, but bringing a sense of safety and peace, calmness to this nation. The guns are here. They're not going anywhere. Sometimes it feels like us against them. And I know the argument that people make that guns don't kill people, but people do. But, as we've heard, people with guns that use them, and especially those that are weapons of destruction, kill people. And so we have got to turn this around. And it's going to take a lot of work. And I'm grateful that we have come together 24/7 to do the work. And to say to you who are in those places of leadership and decision making, rise to the occasion and do what you were elected to do. Pass legislation that transcends your party, that will keep all of us safer in this nation. The Second Amendment was not about offensive violence. And when we look at the statistics, that's what's happening. Too many people are being killed not in self-defense, but in offensive violence. And so we must do this, and we can do this. And thank you for allowing me to be here today, to join with so many other voices in the chorus to say, let's stop this madness in this nation today and to the next generation. Thank you.